This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
We begin with a stark ultimatum in the world's most critical waterway. Iran has treated to block oil shipments to the United States and its partners through the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran warned any vessel aiding the U.S. could be treated as a military target. While Tehran issues threats, the global energy watchdog is moving to calm markets. The International Energy Agency has announced the largest emergency oil release in its history. The move aims to blunt global market shock as the Middle East conflict escalates. Beyond the energy crisis, a high-stakes UN session has exposed a widening regional rift. Israel has given Lebanon a final ultimatum to disarm Hezbollah. Tel Aviv says only real action can prevent a full-scale invasion. From diplomatic warnings to direct strikes, Israel says it has destroyed a key Iranian nuclear site. Brigadier General F.E. Defrin said the Air Force targeted the Takan research facility. The strike has triggered a new wave of attacks from Iran and Hezbollah. Meanwhile, 1 year after the former president was transferred to the ICC, political tensions remain. Vice President Sara Duterte said public fury over her father's detention is still felt across the country. Supporters in Davao City continue to protest the court's jurisdiction. And finally, the music industry has a new billionaire. The latest Forbes list now includes Taylor Swift. Her fortune is driven by the value of her music catalog and the success of her record-breaking world tour. I'm Prince Tripoli. Newsline World starts now. For our first story, Iran is drawing a hard line in one of the world's most critical waterways, threatening to block all oil shipments benefiting the United States and its partners from passing through the Strait of Hormuz. They're warning vessels could be treated as military targets. Almar Frusuelo has the details.
The warning could not have been clearer. Iran's Unified Military Command, the Qatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, announced that it will not allow a single drop of oil to flow through the Strait of Hormuz if it benefits Washington or its allies.
و البته پرقدرت تکرار می‌کنیم هرگز اجازه نمی‌دهیم حتی 1 لیتر نفت به نفع آمریکا و صهیونیست‌ها و شرکای آنها از تنگه هرمز عبور کند.
The threats goes further. Any ship or oil cargo linked to the US, Israel, or their allies could be considered a legitimate military target.
و هر شناوری که شناور و یا محموله نفتی آن برای آمریکا و رژیم صهیونیستی و شرکای متخاصم آنها باشد، هدف مشروع ما خواهد بود.
Iran stopped short of announcing a full closure of the strait. However, they left the door open, warning that sealing it entirely could become a response to what it called conditions being imposed on countries around the world by the US and Israel. The backdrop is a conflict that has been escalating since February 28, when the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran. Tehran struck back, hitting Israeli and American assets across the Gulf. Explosions were reported in multiple countries throughout the region. The human toll is increasing. Iran's Red Crescent has reported over 1,300 deaths, while the US has acknowledged 8 military casualties. The economic fallout is already being felt worldwide. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20% of global oil traffic, and now it has been effectively shut down since the conflict began, sending energy prices soaring across the globe. On Monday, US President Donald Trump suggested the conflict could end very soon, but offered no timeline. For now, with Iran's military issuing direct threats against oil tankers, the world's energy markets remain on edge and the strait at the center of it all. Reporter for Newsline World, Almar Frusuelo, SMNI News.
Hungary's top diplomat is sounding the alarm. warning that Europe is caught in a dangerous energy squeeze, hit simultaneously by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and its own sanctions on Russian oil. More of this from Carlo de la Peña.
As the fallout from the Iran conflict spreads far beyond the Middle East, one European voice is speaking bluntly about the cost. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó has warned that the Hormuz shutdown has effectively blockaded a third of the world's maritime oil trade and a fifth of its natural gas trade, with massive quantities now falling out of the global market entirely. But Szijjártó says Europe's problem didn't start with the war in Iran. He pointed directly at Brussels, arguing that EU sanctions on Russian energy had already left the continent dangerously exposed before the strait ever closed. With two major supply sources now cut off, Europe is left hunting for energy from farther away at higher cost and greater uncertainty. Szijjártó warned a dramatic price surge is already underway, starting at the fuel pump. For Hungary, the minister said the priority is clear: protect the country's own energy infrastructure, maintain sovereign energy policy, and keep supply routes running without interruption. The warning comes as the US-Israel conflict with Iran continues to rattle global energy markets, with the Hormuz shutdown already pushing prices higher around the world. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
The world's top energy watchdog is making an unprecedented move, releasing the largest emergency oil stockpile in its history as the conflict in the Middle East sends shockwaves through global energy markets. Ina Mortel tells us more.
The crisis is real and the response is historic. In Paris, International Energy Agency Director Fatih Birol made a stunning announcement. Member countries have unanimously agreed to release 400 million barrels of emergency oil reserves to stabilize a market on edge.
For oil, the Strait of Hormuz normally provides a route to market for 15 million barrels per day of the global crude oil supply and another 5 million barrels per day of oil products. This amounts to around 25% of the world's oil trade via sea. And now, the flows of oil, gas, and other commodities through the strait have all but stopped.
The trigger, the near total shutdown of Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy corridors. Under normal conditions, roughly 25% of all seaborne oil trade passes through that narrow waterway. Now, those flows have all but stopped. The disruption stems from a rapidly escalating conflict after the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran on February 28. Tehran struck back, hitting Israeli and American assets across the Gulf and triggering explosions in multiple countries in the region. The fallout has been severe. Middle Eastern producers have scaled back output, energy infrastructures has been damaged, and refinery operations disrupted with jet fuel and diesel supplies among the hardest hit. Natural gas markets are also under intense pressure, with few alternatives to replace missing shipments, cutting global energy supply by an estimated 20%. The hardest hit is Asia, where countries are now scrambling to compete for scarce supplies or being forced to ration gas consumptions altogether. While the emergency release aims to buy time and calm markets, Birol was blunt about what needs to happen next.
But, to be clear, the most important thing for a return to stable flows of oil and gas is the resumption of transit through the Strait of Hormuz.
The IEA says it will continue closely monitoring the situation as the conflict and its energy consequences continue to unfold. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Ina Mortel, SMNI News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has defended Washington's military actions against Iran, saying the operation has severely weakened Tehran's military capabilities and helped secure global oil supplies. Speaking about the U.S. military campaign, Dubbed Operation Epic Fury, President Donald Trump claimed American forces had effectively dismantled key elements of Iran's military within hours of the attack. Trump said U.S. forces destroyed dozens of Iranian naval vessels and mine-laying ships that he said pose a threat to maritime traffic. The president also claimed Iran's Air Force, radar systems, and large portions of its missile and drone capabilities had been eliminated during the operation.
Knocked out 58 naval ships. We knocked out their Navy, okay? Let's put it that way. But they also knocked out the mine layers. They call them mine layers. They put mines in the water.
He added that U.S. actions were aimed at ensuring the continued flow of oil through critical global routes, including the Strait of Hormuz, a vital corridor for international energy shipments. The U.S. leader also announced that the International Energy Agency had agreed to coordinate the release of hundreds of millions of barrels of oil from global reserves in an effort to stabilize markets.
Pleased to report that earlier today, the International Energy Agency agreed to coordinate the release of a record 400 million barrels of oil from various national petroleum reserves around the world, which will substantially reduce the oil prices as we end this threat to America and this threat to the world.
Trump described the military campaign as unprecedented, saying American forces had virtually destroyed Iran's military infrastructure while eliminating what he called the country's nuclear potential.
Over the past 11 days, our military has virtually destroyed Iran. Tough country. Their Air Force is gone, totally gone. That took the better part of about 3 hours. They no longer have radar. They don't have anti-aircraft equipment. They don't have anything. Their missiles are down 90%. Their drones are down 85%. We're blowing up the factories where they're made left and right. And frankly, nobody has ever seen anything like it. Nobody's ever seen anything like what you're witnessing now, and that can include the original killing of Soleimani and al-Baghdadi, two of the worst killers in the world that I did, as well as Operation Midnight Hammer, where we totally obliterated Iran's nuclear potential. We obliterated it. They don't have nuclear potential.
However, the claims have not been independently verified, and Iranian officials have yet to respond in detail to the latest statements. Meanwhile, Japan has moved to stabilize global energy markets as tensions rise in the Middle East. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi announced the release of both government and privately held emergency oil reserves to help ease supply concerns. Faith Agustin has more.
Release the oil. That was the directive from Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, who ordered the opening of emergency petroleum reserves as geopolitical tensions threaten global energy supplies. The move comes amid escalating conflict in the Middle East, raising fears of disruptions along key shipping routes such as the Strait of Hormuz, a critical passage for the world's oil trade. Japan's government said both state-controlled reserves and privately held stockpiles would be top to ensure stable fuel supply and prevent sharp spikes in domestic energy prices. Officials stressed that the measure is precautionary but necessary as markets react nervously to the worsening regional security situation. Japan, which imports the vast majority of its energy needs, has long maintained strategic reserves as a safeguard against supply shocks. Authorities say the coordinated release of oil stocks aims to calm markets and reassure consumers that the country has sufficient fuel even if Middle East tensions continue to intensify. This has been Faith Agustin, your citizen correspondent reporting for Newsline World.
A high-stakes session in the UN Security Council on Wednesday revealed a deepening regional chasm as Israel issued a final ultimatum to the Lebanese government. while Beirut asserted it has already outlawed Hezbollah's military activities. Tel Aviv warned that only real action would prevent a full-scale Israeli operation to dismantle the organization by force. Hannah Zain-Janstro has the details.
The halls of the United Nations in New York became a diplomatic battlefield on Wednesday as ambassadors traded sharp rebukes over the rapid escalation in Lebanon. Israeli Ambassador Danny Danon stripped away any diplomatic ambiguity, presenting the Lebanese government with a stark binary choice. According to Danon, Hezbollah has launched nearly 900 rockets and missiles into Israel since March 2nd to avenge the late Iranian leader Ali Khamenei. He insisted that if Lebanon cannot sustain the group, Israel's military will.
There are only two options on the table. Either the Lebanese government takes real action to restrain Hezbollah, or Israel will use its strength to dismantle this terrorist organization. There are no other options.
Lebanese Ambassador Ahmad Arafat struck a desperate tone, painting his nation as a victim caught between two warring powers. He revealed that Beirut has taken unprecedented steps, including a formal ban on all Hezbollah military activities, a requirement for the group to surrender its weapons, and the immediate deportation of any identified Iranian Revolutionary Guard members.
السيد الرئيس، نجتمع في ظرف يجد فيه لبنان نفسه عالقا في حرب لم يخترها بين إسرائيل وحزب الله. طرف لا يعرف أي احترام لقوانين الحرب ويتمادى باعتداءاته على لبنان، وحزب حظر مجلس الوزراء اللبناني نشاطاته العسكرية والأمنية وصنفها بأنها خارجة عن القانون. السيد الرئيس، لن نقبل بإعادة استحضار الماضي، فالشعب اللبناني لا يريد الحرب، وحكومة لبنان ماضية في وضع قراراتها موضع التنفيذ ولن تتراجع عنها.
The council was sharply divided along geopolitical lines. Russia and China condemned what they called the U.S.-Israeli military adventure, citing a March 8 strike that destroyed the Russian House of Culture in Beirut and several incidents involving wounded UN peacekeepers. The U.S., however, threw its full weight behind Israel. U.S. Ambassador Mike Waltz dismissed Hezbollah as nothing more than a proxy for Tehran that stands in the way of a stable Lebanese state.
Hezbollah has yet again made it clear that it does not represent nor does it defend the people of Lebanon. It defends the interest of the Iranian regime. It is nothing more than a proxy and, frankly, an obstacle to Lebanon becoming a peaceful, stable, and functioning state.
As the diplomatic bickering continues, the humanitarian toll is rising. The Lebanese health ministry reports that 634 people have been killed and over 1,500 wounded since the Israeli airstrikes began on March 2nd. With Tel Aviv's ultimatum now public, the prospect of a full-scale ground invasion of southern Lebanon appears closer than ever. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Hannah Jane Sancho, SM9 News.
The Israel Defense Forces had announced the destruction of a critical Iranian nuclear research site as Operation Roaring Lion enters a new, deeper phase of strategic degradation. Brigadier General Erfid Defrin revealed Thursday night that the Air Force has targeted the notorious Takan facility used by Tehran to develop explosives for nuclear warheads, triggering a massive wave of retaliatory strikes from both Iran and Hezbollah. Jane Kudnita has the details.
On the 13th day of the joint U.S.-Israeli campaign, the Israeli Air Force launched 60 strike aircraft in a coordinated sortie across Iran. The primary target was the Takan site, a facility previously struck in 2004, which the IDF claims the regime recently attempted to restore to advance its nuclear weapons program. According to IDF spokesperson Efi Defrin, the strike was designed to permanently defang the regime's ability to produce nuclear-grade explosive material. Simultaneously, Israeli jets leveled several high-rise terror towers in the heart of Beirut, including the Lebanese headquarters of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Air Arm.
השבוע תקפנו את אתר טלקן, ששימש את המשטר לקידום תוכנית הנשק הגרעיני שלו. זהו אתר בו המשטר פיתח חומר נפץ עבור נשק גרעיני וביצע בו ניסויים. תקפנו את האתר הזה כבר בשנת 2024, ומאז זיהינו כי המשטר ניסה לשקם אותו, לכן תקפנו אותו פעם נוספת. אנחנו מעמיקים את הפגיעה ביכולת המשטר להתקדם לעבר השגת נשק גרעיני.
In retaliation, Iran and Hezbollah expanded their rocket and missile fire to many areas across Israel over the last 24 hours. While the IDF's integrated air defense systems intercepted the majority of the incoming fire, the Home Front Command has issued urgent new instructions for residents in the north to remain in protected spaces. In a significant tactical shift, the elite Golani Brigade has been transferred from the Southern Command to the northern border, signaling a massive buildup for potential ground operations against Hezbollah.
ואנחנו נמשיך ונתקוף אותם על כל טעות שהם יעשו, כמו שאמרתי קודם. לגבי השאלה השנייה, תראו, אנחנו כצבא ערוכים להתמשכות המערכה ככל שידרש. יצאנו אליה באופן מושכל, עם תוכנית מסודרת, כדי להסיר איום קיומי. יש לנו תוכנית סדורה. אנחנו מעמיקים את הפגיעה ונמשיך להעמיק אותה עד שיוסר האיום הזה.
As the conflict intensifies, Defrin acknowledged the very challenging reality for Israeli families, children, and the elderly who have spent much of the last 2 weeks in bomb shelters, with the new Iranian Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei vowing to continue the True Promise counteroffensive. The IDF maintains that it has a structured plan to continue deepening its strikes until the threat is removed. This has been Jane Codniter, Global Citizen Correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
A catastrophic failure of a state-owned water reservoir in Brazil's Mariporã and Sao Paulo has turned a local neighborhood into a disaster zone. The rupture of the 2 million-liter tank released a tidal wave of water that killed a worker, destroyed homes, and cut off vital services for the surviving residents. Carla Abellana has the story.
The Capalvinia neighborhood in Mariporã was struck by a sudden and violent wave of destruction at approximately 11 a.m. on Wednesday. A massive water tank operated by Sabesp, the state sanitation company, suffered a total structural failure. 2 million liters of pressurized water swept through the area, crushing buildings and tossing vehicles as if they were toys. More than a dozen fire trucks and teams from the medical emergency service rushed to the scene. The force of the water was so great that it damaged at least 3 homes and 10 vehicles in its immediate path.
A gente fica preocupado, né? Que quem é lesado é os moradores, né? Esse morador acaba sendo lesado, porque sofre danos na casa, sofre danos psicológicos, sem contar aqui, ó, sem água, sem luz, sem internet.
Authorities confirmed that the victim was a 45-year-old contractor who was actively performing sanitation work on the tank at the time of the collapse. 8 others were injured and are currently being treated at regional hospitals. Sabesp officials and civil defense members are now investigating the cause of the rupture. Though no official reason has been provided, the company has expressed deep regret and promised to provide full compensation to the families who have lost their homes and livelihoods. For now, the neighborhood remains cordoned off. The recovery efforts continue. The incident has raised urgent questions about the structural integrity of similar reservoir across the state of Sao Paulo, especially as residents remain without basic utilities in the wake of the flood. Reporting for Newsline World, Carla Abellana, SMNI News.
The Philippines has asserted the need for peace and cooperation in the South China Sea, following statements made by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Amid ongoing tensions, the Department of Foreign Affairs stood firm that the country will continue to anchor itself on international law in addressing maritime issues. Hannah Jane Sancho reports.
The Philippines has asserted the need for peace and cooperation in the South China Sea, following statements made by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Amid prevailing tensions in the region, the Department of Foreign Affairs stood firm that the country will continue to anchor itself on international law in addressing maritime concerns. In a statement released by the DFA on Wednesday, March 11, the agency emphasized the Philippines' responsibility as the current chair of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, for 2026. According to Foreign Affairs Secretary Taz Lazaro, the Philippines' leadership will be guided by a theme, Navigating Our Future, Together, which aims to promote collective responses to regional challenges, particularly on maritime issues. Meanwhile, in a separate statement on March 8, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi emphasized the importance of peace and cooperation in the South China Sea, describing it as one of the most important maritime routes in the world. The Chinese foreign minister also stressed the importance of strong institutional mechanisms to maintain long-term peace and stability in the region. He added that China hopes to conclude the negotiations for the Code of Conduct this year, an agreement he described as a foundation for managing differences and strengthening trust and cooperation in the region. Wang Yi also expressed hope that Philippines would fulfill its role as this year's ASEAN chair. Meanwhile, the DFA reaffirmed the Philippines' goal of keeping the South China Sea a sea of peace, stability, and cooperation. In line with this, the Philippines will continue working with ASEAN members and China to advance an effective, meaningful, and legally binding code of conduct for the South China Sea within the year. The DFA also asserted that any such agreement must be consistent with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea or UNCLOS and must not undermine the rights of other nations. The agency further stressed that all countries, large or small, must comply with their obligations under the international law. Finally, the Philippines assured that it will continue to uphold ASEAN unity and centrality and addressing regional stance alongside its firm stance in protecting the country's sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, this has been Hannah Jane Sancho, SMNI News.
1 year after former President Rodrigo Duterte was transferred to the International Criminal Court, anger remains raw in his hometown, and his daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte, says the fury is felt across the entire country. MJ Mondihar reports.
Ano masasabi mo kay President Marcos Jr. na sa panahon niya, termino niya,
step down, go to hell.
In Davao City, the pain and anger is still fresh. Residents of Davao remain furious 1 year after the Marcos Jr. administration sent former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte to the ICC detention facility in The Hague.
Stupido sa kasos mo na lang wala siya measures gani karon unsay problema nato karon nagtawag nagtaas na ang presyo sa gasolina pati diesel, so ang domino effect grabe na gid kayo.
Every resident interviewed by SMNA News expressed the same sentiment, all condemnation of President Bongbong Marcos.
Mr. President, kaya ka naman. Yung ginawa mo, hindi ka katanggap-tanggap sa mga Pilipino.
San Pedro Cathedral here in Davao was filled with people during a special mass for the former president. Vice President Sara Duterte was among those present, and she made clear the anger is not confined to Davao. According to her, it is not only Davaoenos who are furious with the president, but the entire Philippines.
Hindi lang mga Davaoenos, mga Pilipino, galit sa nangyari. Pag-kidnap kay dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. It is unthinkable that a government, no matter the political differences with the administration, would send a citizen to a foreign jurisdiction.
As the legal battle at the ICC continues, the Vice President says the public's anger will not ease until her father is back on Philippine soil.
Galit ang mga tao, isang taon na sila galit, at hindi pa yung galit hanggang hindi mabalik dito sa Pilipinas si dating Pangulong Rodrigo.
A series of activities are also scheduled here in Davao this month of March for the upcoming 81st birthday celebration of former President Duterte on March 28. The Vice President closed with a message of gratitude to all those keeping the former president in their prayers.
Nagpapasalamat kami sa kanilang pagdarasal para sa kanyang kalayaan at maayos na pag-uwi dito sa ating bayan.
Reporting for Newsline World, this has been MJ Mondihar, SMNI News.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has directed local chief executives across the country to utilize their support fund to help vulnerable sectors affected by the escalating tensions in the Middle East. Daniela Paulita reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. urged local chief executives nationwide to use their local government support fund to ease the burden on vulnerable sectors amid Middle East tensions. The president's call is part of the national government's efforts to cushion the possible economic and social effects of the crisis, particularly on families of overseas Filipino workers. Under the directive, local government units may top their LGSF allocation to provide assistance to communities affected by international conflicts. This includes aid for families of OFWs impacted by the Middle East situation through financial assistance, social services, and emergency response programs. The LGSF is a national government fund distributed to provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays to support priority development projects and urgent local needs. For 2026, the national budget allocated around 57.88 billion pesos for the LGSF to support programs and projects of the LGUs across the country. The fund is designated to give local governments financial flexibility to address economic and social concerns in their communities. While the fund is typically used for development initiatives, LGUs may prioritize or redirect some programs to assist OFWs and their families affected by overseas conflicts. Possible assistance programs include emergency financial aid for returning OFWs, financial support for families whose income has been disrupted, and subsidies for displaced workers. Prior to this, Metro Manila mayors met with Executive Secretary Ralph Recto to discuss the president's directive and prepare for the potential effects of the Middle East crisis on transportation and other local services. Reporting for Newsline World, Daniela Paulita, SMNI News.
Tensions in the Middle East could soon freeze the deployment of overseas Filipino workers. The Philippine Association of Service Exporters, or PASE, warns that if the conflict escalates, the deployment pipeline may slow to a crawl or stop entirely. However, PASE says they are ready to provide skills training and livelihood programs for any OFWs forced to return home. Sheena Turner reports.
Thousands of overseas Filipino workers, or OFW in the Middle East, are already affected by the exchange of missile strikes between the United States and Israel against Iran. The safety and livelihood of OFWs taking chances abroad are at risk. According to Rowena Paragas, president of PASE, many OFWs are currently working in countries like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. If the conflict in the region escalates further, it could lead to a large-scale repatriation of Filipinos.
So the impact here, if the war will be mag-escalate, so there might be a massive repatriation. So of course, we cannot do that alone. Of course, we need also the support from the government.
PASE also warns that not only the safety of OFWs is at stake, but also deployment and the Philippine economy. Paragas admits that if the conflict continues, employers may become more cautious in hiring OFWs. As a result, deployment may slow down or temporarily stop, especially if there are threats to their safety.
Of course, magiging conservative ang mga employer because existing pa yung war. So, everything is a domino effect. Lahat yan maglalaylo. So, hanggang hindi pa nasosolve yung conflict na yan, definitely baka walang deployment.
PASE adds that remittances, which are a major source of dollars for the Philippines, may also decline.
So what will happen? The inflation is going high. So the things sa point na wala na din tayo, maubusan din tayo ng reserve dollar, especially the impact of oil dahil tayo ay nag-i-import. So lahat maapektuhan yung purchasing power ng mga Filipino.
PASE is ready to cooperate with the Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW. PASE has developed an online system to monitor OFWs, making it easier for them to request help, repatriation, or immediate assistance if needed. Under PASE's reintegration program, returning OFWs will be supported through livelihood opportunities, job matching, and skills training to help them restore their lives in the Philippines.
Kaya may mga nakahanda tayong mga member agency din na they have their own training center if they want to upskill. So, pwede naman silang mag-avail ng mga scholarships sa TESDA or even directly to the training center. So may ganon for the upskilling and reskilling. When it comes naman sa pre-employment or working here in the Philippines, meron din tayong ginagawang ongoing dialogue with our employers association na mabigyan sila ng priority ng trabaho dito sa ating bansa. Meron din tayong mga pakikipag-usap sa mga OFW na gusto namang magnegosyo, na meron tayong mga private sector na advocating for mentoring and coaching of OFWs for financial literacy and how to be entrepreneur.
PASEI is also studying the creation of a national registry system for returning OFWs, which will help identify those needing assistance and determine how to support their reintegration into the country. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Sheena Torno, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, the Department of Transportation and the Toll Regulatory Board urged toll operators to provide discounts for Class 3 vehicles or large trucks. The move aims to ease the impact of rising oil prices caused by tensions in the Middle East. Creslin Catarong reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has instructed the DOTR and TRB to coordinate with toll operators on measures that could help drivers and transport companies. During a palace briefing, Transportation Secretary Giovanni Lopez said the government must find other ways to provide assistance aside from cash aid. Because of this, expressway operators were encouraged to reduce toll fees for Class 3 vehicles while petroleum prices remain high.
So tayo naman po sa DOTR at saka TRB, gipag-usap po tayo sa mga toll operators po natin. Na pagdating sa mga provincial buses natin, sa mga sinasabi natin mga trucks that are for essential goods, agri-products, magbigay sila ng diskwento, no, dito sa mga toll fee natin.
Class 3 vehicles are large trucks that transport food, vegetables, and other essential supplies across the country. The DOTR also thanked toll operators for agreeing to the proposal. Currently, toll fees for Class 3 vehicles on the Southern Luzon Expressway or SLEX and Metro Manila Skyway range from 102 pesos to 1,716 pesos depending on the distance traveled. On the North Luzon Expressway, toll charges for large trucks range from 254 pesos to 2,008 pesos.
Kasi we did the numbers, makakatipid sila, parang sa mga bus, makakatipid sila ng mga 5 to 7 pesos. And for 100, there's 7,000 na makakatipid din. No? So yun po, yun yung mga ibang mga sinasabi natin, non-cash, at saka mga other intervention and measures na ginagawa po ng pamahalang nasyonal.
Earlier, the President also ordered the immediate distribution of a 5,000 pesos fuel subsidy for public utility vehicle drivers affected by the Middle East crisis. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Creslin Catarong, SMNI News.
Authorities in South Korea are cracking down on suspected ticket scalping ahead of upcoming concert by global K-pop sensation BTS. Meanwhile, the latest Forbes. Let's find out with this report.
South Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism says it has uncovered nearly 1,900 suspected ticket scalping listings linked to upcoming BTS concerts. Officials said the listings were discovered while monitoring major online resale platforms ahead of the group's performances in Gyeongyang and the Gwanghwamun area of Seoul. Authorities reported identifying 1,868 suspicious resale posts, many offering tickets at significantly inflated prices. Among them, 4 cases involving 105 tickets are believed to be part of organized attempts to resell seats at steep premiums. Those cases have now been referred to the National Police Agency for further investigation. Officials say the crackdown aims to protect fans and ensure fair ticket access as anticipation builds for the highly anticipated concerts. Every year, the Forbes Billionaires list offers a revealing snapshot of global wealth, typically dominated by leaders in technology and finance. But the music industry is also producing its own financial heavyweights. Pop icon Taylor Swift is drawing attention after the value of her music catalog surged to an estimated $900 million, making it the third most valuable music catalog in history. Industry analysts say the massive valuation reflects the continued popularity of Swift's songs, as well as the strong earnings generated through streaming, licensing, and global tours. Swift's growing financial power highlights how top artists are increasingly turning their music catalogs into major long-term assets, rivaling the fortunes built in more traditional industry. And that's all for now. This is Carla Abellana bringing you the latest show buzz.
In latest sports update, Stephen Curry will miss at least another 10 days as he continues to recover from a right knee injury, dealing another blow to the Golden State Warriors as the regular season enters its final stretch. Meanwhile, Arsenal FC salvaged a late draw against Bayer Leverkusen in the first leg of their UEFA Champions League last 16 clash after Kai Havertz converted a late penalty against his former club. Here's Carlo de la Peña for more details.
The Golden State Warriors have struggled without their leading scorer as Stephen Curry continues to recover from a right knee injury. Curry has not played since January 30 against the Detroit Pistons due to patellofemoral pain syndrome, and the Warriors have gone 5-10 during his absence. The team said the two-time MVP is showing progress and has resumed individual on-court workouts. However, Curry will be re-evaluated again in 10 days before he can begin the final ramp-up process that includes full-speed practices and scrimmages. Because of the timeline, Curry is expected to miss at least 6 more games, including a road matchup against the Atlanta Hawks on March 21. The 37-year-old guard is averaging 27.2 points per game this season and remains the Warriors' top scorer as the team pushes through the final stretch of the regular season. Arsenal struggled to contain Bayer Leverkusen's set-piece threats in the Champions League first leg, which proved costly early in the second half. Leverkusen took the lead as Alex Grimaldo delivered a cross that left captain Robert Andrich unmarked to head past David Raya. The Gunners had earlier threatened when Gabriel Martinelli struck the crossbar, dominating much of the first half but failing to convert their chances. Arsenal salvaged a late result when substitute Noni Madueke was brought down in the box in the 89th minute. Kai Havertz calmly converted the penalty, ensuring Arsenal avoided defeat and keeping them in a strong position ahead of the return leg at Emirates Stadium. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Carla de la Peña bringing you the latest sports news.
Spring has transformed the countryside of Loping into a sea of golden blossoms as thousands flock to witness one of China's most celebrated seasonal landscapes. Kai Vilan tells us more.
Every spring, the fields of Luwerbing turn gold. In southwest Yunnan, China, vast stretches of blooming rapeseed flowers are drawing tourists from across the country, all eager to see for themselves a landscape that has become one of the season's most iconic destinations. Set against the region's dramatic karst hills, the golden fields offer a scene that visitors say is nothing short of breathtaking.
因为很早就听说罗平的这个油菜花非常有名气啊。 而且现在是春天，赶上了这个季节，所以一定要过来嘛。
Among the most popular stops is Luwersitian, a scenic viewing area where the blossoms stretch across rolling farmland as far as the eye can see.
罗平我是第一次来，然后初步的感觉就是这个螺丝田太美了，其他的我是刚刚来，然后还没有太多的感受。
For many, the trip lives up to every expectation and then some.
我觉得罗平是一个非常美丽的地方。我在网上看到是有一个介绍说，最美的春天在罗平。我认为这句话是此言不虚。在油菜花盛开的季节，看着喀斯特地貌的小山峰， 非常非常美。
Local tourism officials say the annual bloom continues to draw photographers, nature lovers, and sightseers, all hoping to capture Luwerping's golden countryside at its most spectacular. Reporting for Newsline World, Kay Villan, SMNA News.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the words of the sun. You cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. And that's all for this edition of Newsline World. For God in my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Prince Tripoli. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.